Did you know that over 122,000 Australians are homeless right now? And that number is rising every single day? What's more shocking? Many of them have jobs. That's right. They go to work, earn a wage, and still sleep in their car, on a friend's couch, or worse, on the streets. In one of the wealthiest countries on earth, people are falling through the cracks, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because rent has become completely unaffordable. Across Australia, families are receiving rent hikes of $100, $200, even $300 a week with nowhere else to go. Parents are skipping meals so their kids can have dinner. Young people are being locked out of independence. Even dual-income households are struggling. So, what's driving this chaos? Is it just a lack of houses? Or is something much deeper going on? In this video, we'll break down the 10 hidden reasons behind Australia's rental crisis. The kind the headlines don't tell you. And trust me, you'll want to stick around for the last one. It's the most shocking of all. Number 1. Not enough homes, too many people. Australia is facing a perfect storm, not because people suddenly decided to rent more, but because our population is growing faster than we're building homes. Over 400,000 new migrants arrived in 2023 alone, and that's on top of natural population growth and internal migration to major cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. The problem? We're not building enough to keep up. Construction approvals for new dwellings have plummeted in recent years, and developers are stalling projects due to skyrocketing material and labor costs. This creates a brutal mismatch. Too many people chasing too few places to live. This housing shortage is especially bad in urban areas where jobs, education, and services are concentrated. So even if more homes are built in regional areas, they don't solve the pressure where it's hitting hardest. For renters, this means showing up to inspections where dozens of other desperate people are lining up. It means submitting applications over and over again and getting rejected each time. When demand is this high and supply this low, landlords hold all the power. They can raise prices with no real consequences because someone else will always be willing or forced to pay more. The shortage also affects who gets left behind. Low-income earners, single parents, and people on government benefits often don't stand a chance in such a competitive market. Even middle-income Australians are starting to feel the squeeze. And the worst part? This isn't a short-term glitch. Housing experts warn that without major reforms and serious investment in affordable housing, the gap between supply and demand will only grow, and rents will keep rising. So the question isn't just why we have a housing shortage, it's how long we'll keep letting it push people out of their homes. Number 2, Airbnb is taking over. Once seen as a way for homeowners to make a little extra cash, platforms like Airbnb have quietly transformed into powerful forces reshaping Australia's rental market. In tourist-heavy cities like Sydney, Melbourne, Byron Bay, and even Hobart, thousands of properties that could be long-term rentals are now being listed as short stays for visitors. Why? Because landlords can earn more money renting to holidaymakers for a few nights than renting to a local family for a year. And the impact is devastating. In some areas, there are actually more homes available on Airbnb than there are for rent on the traditional market. This shift has gutted the availability of long-term rentals, driving up prices for everyone else. With fewer homes available for permanent tenants, competition becomes fiercer, and landlords can hike up rents with little resistance. Local workers, the baristas, teachers, retail workers, and nurses who keep communities running, are being priced out of the very towns they serve. In Byron Bay, it's not uncommon for locals to live out of vans or commute from hours away simply because there's nowhere affordable left to rent. The rise of short-term rentals has turned housing into a business model, not a basic human need. While some state and local governments have begun pushing for tighter regulation, like limiting the number of days a property can be listed on Airbnb, enforcement is patchy at best. The loopholes are large, and the profits are even larger. Without serious oversight, the number of short-stay listings is only expected to grow. And until more balance is restored, regular Australians will continue to be pushed out of their communities, not because they can't afford to live, but because the system now profits more from tourists than it does from residents. Number 3, wages can't keep up. Here's a painful truth. While rent prices have soared in recent years, wages have barely moved. For millions of Australians, their income simply isn't rising fast enough to keep pace with the cost of living, especially when it comes to housing. According to the Grattan Institute, low and middle-income households are spending a larger share of their earnings on rent than ever before. In some cases, renters are now paying over 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. That's not just unaffordable, it's unsustainable. It leaves little left over for essentials like food, transport, or savings. This problem hits hardest for casual workers, gig economy earners, and people on fixed incomes. A young retail worker or a single parent relying on Centrelink just can't compete with wealthier tenants who can offer more. Even for professionals, wage stagnation means they're slowly being priced out of the very suburbs they used to afford. And it's not just happening in big cities. Regional towns, once considered affordable alternatives, are now facing rental spikes too, especially as remote work encourages more people to move out of metropolitan areas. What was once a smart financial move is becoming a struggle to survive. The emotional toll of this gap between rent and wages is growing. Renters are living with constant anxiety, unsure if they'll be able to afford their home next month or be forced to move suddenly. Some are working multiple jobs, skipping meals, or delaying medical care just to cover housing. Without stronger wage growth or tighter rental protections, the balance of power will continue to tip toward landlords. And for renters, especially those living paycheck to paycheck, this could mean falling off the edge entirely, into debt, crisis accommodation, or homelessness. Number 4, investors come first. In Australia, the property market has become less about providing homes and more about building wealth, but not for everyone. Government policies like negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts heavily favor property investors, allowing them to claim losses on their investments as tax deductions. This means that even if a rental property isn't making money month to month, investors can still turn a profit through tax benefits and long-term capital growth. In simple terms, the system rewards people who already have money and property, while leaving renters behind with fewer protections and rising costs. This investor-first model has flooded the market with landlords who are more interested in maximizing returns than providing stable, affordable housing. Rent becomes just another way to increase profits, and when prices rise, whether due to interest rate hikes or inflation, landlords often pass those costs directly on to tenants. Renters, on the other hand, have little to no power in these situations. They're expected to absorb the increases, and if they can't, there's always someone else waiting in line who can. The market treats housing as a commodity, not a right, and renters are the ones paying the price for that mindset. What makes this situation worse is that governments often hesitate to touch these tax breaks, fearing backlash from investors and property owners. But the longer these policies remain untouched, the more distorted the housing market becomes. It's created a two-tier system. One group builds wealth through housing, while the other struggles just to keep a roof over their head. Until we start designing housing policy with people, not profits, in mind, the scales will remain tipped, and more Australians will find themselves pushed out of secure housing, not because they failed, but because the system was never built for them. Number 5, public housing has been abandoned. Public housing was once a crucial safety net in Australia, a way to ensure that no matter your income, you had access to a stable, affordable place to live. But over the past few decades, that safety net has been slowly dismantled. Today, only around 4% of housing in Australia is public housing, compared to over 8% in the 1980s. That might not sound like a big drop, but when demand is this high and supply is this tight, it's massive. Instead of expanding public housing, many governments have sold off properties, outsourced to community housing providers, or simply let the stock decay without proper maintenance. The result is a public housing system that's completely overwhelmed. Waiting lists stretch for years, in some states, even a decade, with thousands of vulnerable Australians stuck in limbo. These aren't just people experiencing homelessness. They're single parents, pensioners, people with disabilities, and survivors of domestic violence who desperately need stable housing but have nowhere to turn. Many are forced into the private rental market, where rising costs and competition make it nearly impossible to find something safe and affordable. And when they can't, the slide into homelessness becomes dangerously fast. What's even more concerning is that while governments talk about affordable housing, they often mean housing that's just slightly below market rate, not truly low-cost homes for people who need it most. Real public housing, where rent is capped at a percentage of your income, is becoming a rarity. Without serious investment in building and maintaining government-owned housing, the crisis will only get worse. The market alone isn't going to fix this. For thousands of Australians, the only thing standing between them and the streets should be public housing. But right now, that door is all but closed. If this is hitting close to home, let us know in the comments. Your experience could help others feel less alone. We put a lot of time and heart into making videos like this, so if you're finding it valuable, don't forget to subscribe. It's just one click, but it means everything to us. Number 6. Rent assistance isn't enough. For many low-income Australians, Commonwealth rent assistance is supposed to be the last line of defense, a government payment designed to help cover the rising cost of rent. But here's the hard truth. It's not even close to being enough. The maximum payment hasn't kept pace with the rental market for years, and in most capital cities, it barely scratches the surface. In fact, research shows that even with rent assistance, a person on job seeker or the age pension is still likely to be paying more than 30% of their income on rent, which pushes them into what's officially considered housing stress. This growing gap between assistance and reality is leaving thousands exposed. Vulnerable Australians, including single parents, elderly people, carers, and those with disabilities, are being forced to make impossible choices. Do they pay rent or buy groceries? Do they keep the lights on or pay for medications? These aren't just tough financial decisions. They're choices no one should have to make in a wealthy country. And when rent prices jump again, as they so often do, many are simply unable to keep up. That's when evictions happen. That's when cars become bedrooms. That's when homelessness becomes a reality. The frustrating part is that solutions exist. Economists and housing advocates have been calling for a major overhaul of the rent assistance system for years, not just to increase the payment, but to index it properly to real-world rents. But action has been slow, and for the people relying on that support, the consequences are immediate. Without stronger, better targeted assistance, the system is failing the very people it was designed to protect. And in a housing crisis like this, every dollar of help can be the difference between safety and survival. Number 7. Building costs are out of control. One of the less visible but hugely damaging drivers of the rental crisis is the rising cost of construction. Over the past few years, building material prices have soared, driven by global supply chain issues, inflation, and labor shortages. Timber, steel, concrete, all the essentials needed to build homes, are now significantly more expensive than they were just a few years ago. According to industry reports, construction costs jumped by more than 20% between 2021 and 2023, and they haven't settled down. For developers and builders, this means higher risk and thinner profit margins. So many of them are simply walking away from projects. The result? Thousands of new homes that were planned are now stalled or canceled. Developments that could have added much-needed rental stock are sitting as empty lots or half-finished shells. And the ones that do go ahead often come at a much higher price point, aimed at wealthier buyers and investors, not the average renter. In effect, the homes that are being built are often not the ones we actually need. They're too expensive, too few, and too slow to arrive. Meanwhile, demand for housing keeps growing, and the supply crunch gets even worse. This construction slowdown doesn't just hurt renters now, it sets the stage for higher rents in the years to come. When fewer homes are built today, we'll have an even bigger shortage tomorrow. And unless the government steps in with subsidies, incentives, or public housing investment, private developers alone won't be able to build fast or affordably enough to fix the crisis. Building costs may seem like a background issue, but they're a massive reason why the rental market is so tight, and why so many Australians are struggling to find a place they can actually afford. Number 8. Vacancy rates are hitting record lows. Across Australia, vacancy rates, the percentage of rental properties sitting empty, have dropped to historic lows, and that's a major warning sign. In cities like Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide, vacancy rates have fallen below 1%, which means there are virtually no properties available to rent. A healthy rental market typically sits at around 3%, where supply and demand are balanced. But right now, the market is completely lopsided and renters are feeling the pressure. With so few options, people are forced to compete aggressively for whatever is available, often offering more than the asking price just to secure a home. This extreme competition puts all the power in the hands of landlords. They can raise rents with confidence, knowing that desperate tenants will accept the increase or risk losing the property. It also means less tolerance for renters who need repairs, who have pets, or who ask for lease flexibility, because landlords have a long list of people waiting to take their place. For renters, this creates a climate of fear and instability. Every lease renewal becomes a gamble, and moving house becomes a financial and emotional burden that many simply can't afford. The ripple effects of low vacancy rates go beyond just higher rents. They also increase the risk of homelessness, particularly for vulnerable groups who are already struggling to compete, like young people, single-income families, and older Australians on fixed incomes. When there are no options, there's nowhere to go. This isn't just a market issue, it's a national emergency. Unless we boost housing supply and take steps to reduce the stranglehold of low vacancies, the rental crisis will only deepen, and the number of Australians without secure housing will continue to rise. Number 9. Rent bidding is making things worse. In today's overheated rental market, a disturbing trend has taken hold: rent bidding. This is when tenants, desperate to secure a property, offer to pay more than the advertised rent, often without being prompted. What used to be rare is now common practice in many parts of Australia, especially in high-demand suburbs where dozens of people apply for the same rental. Some renters are offering an extra $50, $100, or even $200 per week just to edge out the competition. And while it might help one person win a lease, it pushes the average rent higher for everyone else. Rent bidding creates a vicious cycle. Landlords quickly realize they can get more than what they originally asked for, so they start expecting higher offers as the norm. Over time, this artificially inflates rental prices beyond what the market would naturally support. It's not just about competition, it's about creating a pay-to-play system, where those with the most money win and those struggling financially are left behind. The result is a deeply unfair system that rewards wealth and punishes anyone who can't compete in this bidding war. For renters already on the edge, this can mean missing out on dozens of homes in a row. Some states have tried to crack down on rent bidding by banning agents from encouraging it or making the process more transparent. But in practice, these laws are hard to enforce. Many tenants still feel pressured to bid more, especially when they've been rejected multiple times before. And because it often happens quietly, through private conversations or written offers, it's difficult to track. Unless there's stronger regulation and tougher penalties, rent bidding will continue driving prices up and pushing the rental market further out of reach for everyday Australians. Number 10, homelessness doesn't look like it used to. When people think of homelessness, they often imagine someone sleeping rough on a park bench or under a bridge. But in modern Australia, homelessness has taken on new and often invisible forms. Today, a growing number of people who are homeless are actually working, holding down jobs, paying taxes, and doing their best to survive. They're living in cars, crashing on friends' couches, staying in overcrowded share houses, or paying for cheap motels just to get through the week. These are the hidden homeless, and their numbers are growing fast. The Australian Bureau of Statistics estimates over 122,000 people are experiencing homelessness, and that's likely an underestimate. This crisis is affecting people from all walks of life. Young professionals priced out of the rental market, single mothers fleeing domestic violence, older women with no superannuation, and full-time workers whose incomes can't cover rent. They're all being swept into housing insecurity. Many are doing everything right by society's standards, but still can't find a stable place to live. And the emotional toll is enormous. Constant stress, the fear of eviction, the shame of not having a fixed address. These experiences don't just damage mental health, they isolate people from their communities and trap them in cycles of poverty. The most dangerous part? This kind of homelessness is easy to ignore. Because it's not always visible, it doesn't always spark the outrage it should. But make no mistake, we are in the middle of a national emergency. As rents continue to rise and housing becomes harder to access, more Australians are slipping through the cracks. Homelessness isn't just someone else's problem anymore. It could be your neighbor, your co-worker, even someone in your own family. And unless things change, this crisis will only grow. Australia's rental crisis isn't just about numbers. It's about people. It's about families forced to choose between paying rent or buying groceries. It's about workers who hold down full-time jobs but still can't afford a place to live. It's about young Australians giving up on independence, and vulnerable people slipping into homelessness through no fault of their own. Behind every rent increase, every eviction notice, and every rejected application is a real story, one filled with stress, fear, and uncertainty. The 10 reasons we've explored today are not isolated problems, they're deeply connected symptoms of a housing system that's failing its people. From underinvestment in public housing to the unchecked power of investors and the growing influence of platforms like Airbnb, these factors are turning housing from a basic human right into a privilege few can afford. And while the crisis might feel overwhelming, the first step toward change is awareness, understanding how we got here and refusing to accept it as normal. If this video made you think, we want to hear from you. What's the rental situation like in your area? Are you being priced out? Have you had to make sacrifices just to keep a roof over your head? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. We pour hours of research, writing, and care into making these videos to inform and support our community. If you found this video helpful, please consider supporting us. It's just one click to subscribe, but it means the world to us. And don't forget to watch our other videos for more insights into the issues that really matter.